data back to council about their actual operations, which we weren't currently getting through the current contract. So, yeah, it'll be moving. There are provisions in the existing contract for a 3-month changeover period with JJ Richards, and we'll be using that as a process and exchanging them over, and they will be part of their commitment, of course, through the tender process is to source all their machinery and all their staff locally from the Blackwater area in order to take over those operations.
Okay. So all locally living in Blackwater?
Yes, and without prejudging them, normally the JJ is currently employ two people locally from the Blackwater area, so there's a strong chance that it's probably those guys will just change uniforms basically, so it'll be the same staff.
Any other questions?
Okay. Well, JJ Richards will still work in Blackwater, won't they? Because there'll be businesses there with their own with JJ Richards, skip bins, etc.
Yeah, this pertains just entirely to the running of the landfill out there. So we contract the landfill. So JJ still supplies our recycling bin services to that landfill as well. So they will interact with the new contractor, but all as part of all our collection services, etc., and all commercial services, that all still remains with JJ Richards under our commercial, under our collections contract with them. Yeah.
If you'll just indulge me, unfortunately Councillor Nixon wasn't able to be here this morning.
Yeah.
She's just sent through some questions in relation to this particular agenda item.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Mayor Hayes has got a copy of these as well. Richard just got this, so yeah. Just to clarify, the contract is just to manage the site. It doesn't include any residential collections at all.
That's true. It's just the running of the Blackwater.
Comment in relation to a particularly large sum of money involved in like the annual fees, and like it does seem like
it is, but there are some changes, particularly between this and the existing contract. The existing contract is quite old, and so it is a significant jump between the two contracts, but we're also stipulating, because of our compliance, ensuring we maintain compliance, part of our issues and costs coming to council are actually contamination of wastes and incorrect disposal properties. So the old contract only had one person there, and it's difficult to run a landfill with that many customers to take only one person on. So the new contract actually asks for 2 people to permanently be at site in order for one to actually be at the gatehouse whilst one's actually running operations. And it'll also help with compliance in that area. Particularly issues from Blackwater are consistently wind-blown litter, one of our bigger problems. That's hard for one person to keep a hold on top on whilst also conducting those operations. And it also fits in, it'll also dovetail in with our need for a weighbridge, which will most likely occur in the 18-19 financial year. And once a weighbridge is in, we will need those 2 staff to man it anyway. So the 2 staff coming on will precede that change in operations, and we need to do that again from a compliance perspective.
I noticed, I'm not sure what we were paying previously to JJ Richards, but I did pick up in the report that there were a number of environmental compliances that weren't being achieved by that particular contractor at that site. So, I understand probably that there's going to be a later, higher level of
there's certainly
diligence around those environmental concerns or those issues. Just looking at some of the other, and one of the questions that Councillor Nixon had was about Proterra itself, but I know that you have done reference checks.
Yeah, we've done reference checks with other regional local councils, and they've all said, they've been good, and those other councils have also had a heavy compliance focus on the EHP, and they said the company's been very good in helping them meet those compliance, those factors and issues.
Seems to be the theme in most of it. And there was a question in relation to calling tenders for just that site. So any of the other tenders for any of the other landfill sites, are there current management arrangements? Are they coming up for tender soon?
No, all other facilities in Central Highlands are actually run by ourselves from council. Blackwater is our only contracted facility.
All right. I think that's covered off on most of those questions you had. Any other questions, council?
You spoke of the sum of money is just, they're on par with some of those tenders, but you spoke of the efficiencies and the technology that this company is going to bring to us. How are those efficiencies going to come back into vogue? How will that help us in the long term?
They'll help us with reporting compliance back to the state in terms of how much waste is actually going in and how much we're actually landfilling. It'll also help with our future design. We do have a, excuse me, we do have a management plan, a design plan for the future of Blackwater landfill. So the machinery that they'll be using will help us ensure that we're actually complying with that. So it'll help us achieve the compaction depths we need to actually make sure we're doing it. At the moment, it's being carried out with what's called a drop, which is a kind of all-in-one machine, but there isn't as much weight to that. So it's not compacting our landfill as effectively as other machinery could. So they've basically got GPS, they remotely satellite track their vehicles, much similar to the way that we're introducing the same asset management into council. So they know when their machines are being run, they can identify efficiencies in running their own machine, which translates to less coming back to us in terms of day rate charges. And they can, and that they also, like I said, they actually know the compaction less, they can actually tell depth levels, etc. of machineries, where it's been working, how long it's been working. And feed those back to us.
So Kent, this is a new company that we'll be dealing with.
Yeah.
What checks and balances do council have in place? Like it's a 1-year contract with the option of another 2. What checking do we do, monitoring do we do, what is the process around that to make sure that they're doing what they say they're doing, they're meeting their contractual?
Twofold, there's waste services ourselves in negotiation, and we do go out to Blackwater landfill quite regularly, and the Blackwater landfill still also gets inspected by EHP. So they also will pick up any compliance or issues that need to be addressed there that the contractor needs to pick up on. But yes, we also go out there and have a look at ourselves, and we're putting a fair bit of time into Blackwater in the last 12 to 18 months to ensure that it's running as effectively as it can. As you said, there is the 1 year, so if there is issues that come up and the contractor cannot actually provide that service that they've specified that they're going to provide, then we have the facility to finish the contract.
Yeah. Okay, well, the recommendations there that the Central Highlands Regional Council endorsed the recommendation of call for tender 2016T035E, Blackwater Waste Facility Operations of Point Proterra Group as a preferred supplier for a period of 1 year with a possible 2-year extension to undertake the operation of the facility. Are you happy with that recommendation? Moved, Councillor Daniels. Seconded, Councillor Roth. All in favour? Carried. Roll to tracking. Thanks very much, Ken, for that. Moving right along to corporate services, we've got Margaret Gatt back in the room talking us through the asset disposal policy amendment. Jason's not here to give a special introduction, Margaret, so I hope you're going to be fine if I just throw direct to you to talk us through this. But councillors, you will remember it was only 28th of March that we had this before this committee for discussion. So I guess this is acting on the direction given to you at that time, and a policy is in front of us today for discussion and amendment. And endorsement, hopefully.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the councillors. This report is brought to you today for the asset disposal policy amendment. As per our council's strategic briefing forum on the 28th of March, where I tabled a report with you seeking clarification on some various options we had in moving forward for the donation of assets to the community. In recognition of Council's existing policy, where we're bound by a range of obligations within our current legislative framework, and this policy underpins this and supports these requests for allowing for the donation of sale or equipment in a manner that achieves value for money, promotes fair and effective competition, considers potential benefits to the community, considers the impact on the environment, and ensures open and transparent behaviour. So further to that, the proposed amendment to the policy will reduce ongoing financial obligations for repairs and maintenance on items that are no longer owned by council, and provide clarity to the community organisations where donations have been made. For council's consideration, we've recommended minor amendments to the policy, such as the inclusion of the definition of a community organisation as per the Local Government Regulation 2012, clarification of council being indemnified of any future repairs and maintenance for donated items, the inclusion of a buyer's risk statement, and the inclusion of documentation and a declaration statement. So specifically, under the donation of current assets, including scrap, we've made an amendment to the policy that specifies indemnifying council of any future repairs, maintenance, and accepting the condition on an as-is and where-is basis. That's, in essence, the crux of the amendment to the policy, where we had previous ambiguity around that in the previous or in the existing policy. I think that's the essence of my recommendation to council to approve the amendments to the policy.
Yeah, done, Margaret. I think they're very accurate reflection of our discussion back in March. I think it's good. It covers us. Previous experiences have obviously led us down this path to make these amendments. And, yeah, I think they're good fine with me. Anyone have any questions or queries, comments for Margaret?
I think it's a good change to the policy. However, if you get an organisation or a community who takes on a tractor and a slasher, and it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. But when it breaks down, they're not going to have the funds to repair it, and they're going to come straight back to council and say, "What can you do about this for us?"
Which is
How do
why
we?
I think it's different to the actual discharging of their current asset. I think that's no different to any community club that's in that situation at any time. This is a policy just relating to the actual disposal of assets. Understand what you're saying, and it could happen, but it happens all the time anyway. I think if we forego the obligation of repairing it, and they know in this part of it stated clearly, and it is a big improvement. Let's deal with this, and then I think we deal with the next issue through level playing field or game plan.
I think this is going forward because you'll be aware of that situation we had down in Alston.
Yeah.
Where it wasn't clear in the policy what we could and couldn't support. And I think going to dispose of current assets, including scrap, like number one, there's a donation or sale to a community organisation. It's very clear now in the policy that, council is not responsible for future repairs and maintenance, and they must accept the condition on an as-is where-is basis. So it can't be clearer really in the policy, and it's advisory. Take it on, and the reality is there's a reason why these assets are, they're on the list for disposal. They're coming to the end of the useful life in this council. So. At least we've got a policy now to say, whereas we did not have that before, and that's where the risk was for us. very hard to say no when they come back and it's broken and they've only had it for 6 months or whatever. And it's just really wear and tear, not negligence.
I think any asset that we are disposing of, whether light vehicle or otherwise, does everyone get a copy of our, any tender or any interested party get a copy of this so that they know in black and white what they're up for?
I would suggest that we would communicate with them once council endorses the amendment to the policy. And in addition, Councillor Nixon requested at the Strategic and Briefing Forum that we advertise more in a proactive manner items that we're going to be sending to auction. And so we've initiated that process so that we've got quite a few actually that are going to auction in the next couple of months. And so we'll make sure that we get that out through our various communication channels.
And that gives community groups or whatever the opportunity to purchase those items through an auction process. And then that alleviates us of all risk. It's like any other auction process. That's an as is, where is. There's no warranty. There's no returning of the item. That's it. So councillors, any other comments or feedback from Margaret?
Have we dealt with how we will advertise, I guess, any items that we want to, or deal with who gets the donations of the machinery in any of the policies? As in, how do we choose, or how do we advertise if we're going to donate something, so to make it fair and transparent?
So in terms of current practice, it really is on a case-by-case basis. So we will receive a request through an email from a councillor, or and we assess each of those on a case-by-case basis. And we don't advertise as such. I suppose we, we actually just wait for a request. If we don't have a request and that item is marked, it's written down value and it's beyond its life, we send it to auction. Not necessarily for replacement, but we send it to auction. So I understand what you're saying, Councillor Daniels. I suppose that the policy doesn't take into account that we advertise pieces of equipment for donation, because our first premise is to actually get some proceeds from sale to try to bring that revenue back into council through an auction process.
I guess there's a history of council supporting community groups with these pieces of equipment. Should we go to an auction process that is a public display, these community groups could be disadvantaged by individual businesses as well for outbidding, and we may see community groups not being able to, where I'm only pulling figures out of my bum, where historically they could get something under a grant or an application for 5,000, they could be bidding up to 7,000. So are we disadvantaging groups by putting it to public auction rather than through a tendering process from community groups? I don't know, I'm just asking the question. Because historically we do lean towards the community groups for these assets that we're disposing of.
Well, I don't know that we do, Alan, because in my time here, there's been very few requests for items, to council for items that we may be looking to dispose of that could be reused in a donated format with the community group. There's been probably less than a handful, to be honest. And my experience is that, like you're saying, Margaret, things that are at their useful life or we have no purpose for, generally go to auction. We don't usually do much in the way of tendering processes. But what Councillor Nixon was saying was we should maybe create a greater awareness of what items are going to auction, so that gives our own council area the opportunity to go to Bill. A lot of these auctions are at Billawheeler or Campton or elsewhere. They're not usually held here in the Central Highlands. So often the people in the Central Highlands don't really know what items are up for sale. And what Councillor Nixon's point was, well, perhaps your community groups, if they knew what we were selling, might be able to use the auction because they are requiring things at a lesser rate. than buy new or whatever. So it's just another way of them to acquire things. But notwithstanding, we still have the community grants process where, groups and clubs and whatever can apply for grants up to $5,000 for things like lawnmowers and so on. So, or riding mowers. Does that help? What are you thinking, Councillor Roll?
Yeah,
The bit of head shaking.
I think the key, council, is that this was to close a gap around some ambiguity. If we were to dispose of an asset by donating it to an organisation, and what Margaret's done is she's brought some clarity to it by proposing an amendment to that disposal policy. The other contextual things that we've talked about are simply as the chair points out, we need to look at more local processes for disposing of some of our accumulated chattels, particularly in depots over the years, balanced with the approach that appeals to this council regarding the creation of linger nodes and building resource banks or surplus material that could be used by community groups, creating those linger nodes. So there's a balance to cleaning up a depot and running an auction and inviting other vendors to make it a bigger event. You get your transparency through advertising in local papers about the items or the chattels that are there. There could be some reserves in the context of an auction, but we might withdraw some or keep some items aside that are appropriate to be repurposed for linger nodes. So that becomes your resource bank. And there needs to be, these are things we've talked about, and I'll probably just mention it for Daniel's benefit. It'd be good for those resource banks, the inventory for them to be known to different community reference groups. So if, for example, Springshaw wants to build something in Springshaw, they might get inspired by seeing the inventory list of what's in store at Capella that is in a resource bank, and vice versa, so stuff might be able to be used in different communities. So this all sounds good and it appeals to this council, and we want to do that. Putting it into action is probably the harder thing, and that's what we haven't done a lot of work on, putting a process around how to create those resource banks. But that's a challenge for the future. For now, it's about, the message we've been given clearly from council is go local with your options, particularly for the chattels. There's good processes in this policy that talk about asset disposal generally, and it's most of our asset disposal is in relation to vehicles, but there is a need to clean up these depots. And the other point that it's already been mentioned that's important to recognise is that we don't want to get into the business of trying to redirect surplus assets to community organisations, but we're receptive to it. It has to be driven by the community organisation making the approach. Otherwise it gets very messy. We're trying to divide things up or push things out to different groups, and that's not really what we're here for. We're here to basically run assets efficiently. Once they reach their useful life, they should be disposed of appropriately. If there's a higher value by a community organisation utilising it, there's social benefit attached to that. This policy now gives you the mechanism to do that, deal with that. And that's where we're at. So I hope that makes things a little bit clearer. So you've got an instrument now that's, I recommend to council that this committee that you adopt. That was the immediate need to address that. Going forward, the two key things are we need to look at some local options to clean up our depots, and the other thing is we need to work out how we can have a system for managing those resource banks, the inventories of items that could be used for creating public art and social infrastructure, or public infrastructure. So there's the points.
Yeah, agree with those actions. I'm happy to move it.
Okay. Okay, so to the Central Highlands Regional Council approve the proposed amendments to the asset disposal policy, CH0043, and adopt the asset disposal policy with effect from the date of resolution. So move Councillor Daniels, seconded Councillor Hayes, all in favour? Is that?
Speak Madam Chair too, if it is the move of the committee, it would be good, I think, to formally capture those two actions, those additional actions, because otherwise they become, part of our constant conversation about things that we want to do. But I think if they're captured here in the minutes, there's a reporting mechanism to make sure that they're acted on in a timely manner, or at appropriate time. So I think even if you resolve, you don't necessarily need to move and second it,
Yeah.
but if you resolve it to have its own minute reference number, that council investigate options or make plans to hold public auctions at appropriate depots to dispose of surplus equipment. Further, that items of value to communities, certain items of value to communities be retained in a resource bank and managed by an inventory that's shared among community reference groups. Something along those lines. This captures those other couple of actions so that we don't continually talk about it, we actually have them there to follow
We
through
really
on.
do need to set that research. Tricia, you going there?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So resolve, so it won't be in this one
No, no,
here, so
no.
that's done and dusted.
So, well, we know it's not done and dusted. Oh, yeah,
Oh, I see.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Councillor Rob, did you vote on that? Did you support the adoption of that policy or not?
So you've got the office of recommendation as you've got there, but in the report, in recognition of requests for repairs, blah, 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 we have requested council to consider the following options. And you've got 5 options there. And the last one here, the last option is leave policy in its current form. So how are we going to, no, you've made changes to the policy, but then one of the options is leave it. So,
Well, we could just not make changes to the policy and leave it as it was.
yeah, but
Which
we've
we don't
just
really
said there that we're going to adopt the policy. So
amend.
we haven't discussed these options.
That's an option that you could have done today.
No, I wouldn't have, I
so
wouldn't
we're
say leave the policy as it is, but
No,
are those options now still included in that resolution? We
no,
haven't really, no,
no. The resolution is that we
that we actually,
approve the amendments
yeah, and
in the asset disposal policy.
so we do everything except 5 in the options. Is that right, Margaret?
Councillor Exton, through the chair, when I brought the discussion paper at the strategic and briefing forum, I put the 5 options in there for discussion, and I think we had quite a robust discussion around those various options, and there wasn't an absolute direction on any of those options to be included within the asset disposal policy, other than reducing that ambiguity around repairs and maintenance and us being held, or us actually being indemnified for those future repairs and maintenance. So I've included it in there as a reference point to what was originally brought to council on the 28th of March, but the policy doesn't specify or consider those options or processes moving forward.
So just as the policy is written there now.
So, are you?
Okay, happy now.
All right, now it's formal. It was not formal as it was.
Sorry.
Unanimously, thank you very much. But it's important,
We've got some draft words there if you
Yeah.
like.
because, and a classic example of the resource bank starting to work is, Beasley Park, they've just put the new post and rail fence up, but the old fence was pipe, it was, so they've taken that down, and now that is actually sitting at the Rolleston depot as a resource in the resource bank that could potentially be used by somebody else. So, and there were certainly members of the community that were very eager to reuse that for themselves, and the direction that Parks and Gardens gave was very clearly to the community that that would go into the resource bank, and hope, with the view that these sorts of things can be shared across communities. And you know what, the locals were very happy with that. It was a very sensible approach on behalf of council. So that's one thing to say, but now how does someone in Capella know that we've got that pipe sitting in Rolleston that could be used for a project? So that's the other part of what we want to do.
And Chair, that the shaded grounds at Springshaw is having some repairs, maintenance done and changes to the liquor area. And so maybe the resources from the Rolleston pipe could be used to make the chairs and tables and things, so, yeah, I agree.
But we should be able to, yeah, so whoever's in Springshire should be able to pull up a table of some
Yeah.
resources in the various banks somewhere, and think, oh, well, that would be useful. They might borrow or, that doesn't exist at the moment, but the intentions and willingness of council is for that to happen, so.
It's a really good recycling initiative, and if we could make it work, I think it's got a lot of public value, I think. The concept came from John Enbridge, for those of you who weren't aware of it. He was at the Springshore Mayoral Summit or Community Summit. It was a really well received idea. So there's some draft wording there on the screen. It says, and it's connected because I think it needs to be so that there's balance around the options. So that council arranged chattel options at select depots to dispose of surplus equipment. Now, we could put in there inviting other vendors, but I think that's just a natural management response. It'd be good to make the options more substantial. If we have other vendors there, it's a bigger event, and provided there's enough room in the depots, that could occur. Or if we don't have much stuff, it might be appropriate that we work with an auction house to take our equipment to another auction. So, but that gives a lot of leeway to arrange those auctions where they need to occur or where the bulk of the equipment is. Then it says further that council institute resource banks comprised of appropriate surplus council material for use by community groups for the creation of public art / linger nodes that is managed via an inventory known to community reference groups. Or it could say that's publicly available on the website or something. I'm not sure what the best way to make it happen is, but that gives enough direction from this committee to myself and the executive leadership team to get on with it and actually create a process around managing that surplus equipment.
Yeah, Scott, depending on what actually is the nature of the option. If you've got more machinery, I know that out of the college we had a lot of excess machinery and that sort of stuff. So it made sense to get one of the big auction houses to do it. But if you're having more garden type water resources, to have a local.
I agree. As well, it depends on what the nature of the items are.
It does.
And where your best market is for that. And best marketing can be achieved through other platforms, but it just, at least that gives them flexibility now and encourages us to look at those other options. Or
I don't think we need to punch headlong into it either, because it'd be good to take a bit of time for workshop managers, depot staff to actually go through a little bit of cleaning up. Councils are notorious for harbouring all sorts of old parts which can become incredibly useful at times, but in other respects where it's all your consumables for a fleet that no longer exists and things like that, well, it is time for that stuff to go. There's people in the private arena that will buy that stuff. I think this would be a good way to do some solid housekeeping in our stores and depots and yards and in other places. So if we take a bit of time with it and it's done properly, indicates the need to go back and do it every few years. It'd be good to do it properly and do it well.
Through the chair, if I could just make one more comment there, we've already commenced an audit of all of our plant and equipment, so not necessarily garden or consumables, garden tools and things like that, but we've captured around 460 items, and so we've still got 100 or so left to capture, and that audit, the finalisation of that audit, which will then obviously have a complete inventory of basically where those items are and the remaining useful life and the condition of them, so that we're actually already advanced to be able to push forward on the second recommendation then.
That's good.
yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, just discussing with Mr. CEO here, perhaps we should just get a mover and seconder for that, rather than just.
Not necessarily against it, just, or not against it, but just in regards to an inventory named community reference groups, does reference need to come out and just make community groups?
Well, I'll be guided by the committee, and I know that you're an observer, Councillor McIntyre, but I think that, and this is where it needs some thought. I think it came out of the community summit, and it was to inspire those reference groups to add value to communities by thinking how they could create some of this stuff. I just worry that if it, well, it's not a worry really, I suppose, but if it is known to all groups, or it's on the website, or this is the stuff in the resource bank, then, you know, all of a sudden that you won't have much gear there, because you have all sorts of different groups saying, oh, we'll take all that gold pipe, or we'll take all that. And then when it does come time for a community reference group that they might have an idea, some of the equipment that they need won't be there. So I'll be guided by the committee, but I don't know whether you want to, do you want to make more isolated to the community reference groups, or do you want to make it more open?
Can't organisations or groups actually go through the community reference group if they, wouldn't that be a source of I don't know, communities, you know, getting together and.
Because it could be, for example, there could be someone from the Scrimshaw Working Force Association on the Scrimshaw Community Reference Group that has an idea about adding value to a space in the form of welcome or whatever, which would be beneficial in communities. But yeah, so I'm a bit like Scott, if we just threw it out there, we really don't have enough in the bank at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so by doing that, doesn't that actually also give a bit more weight to the community reference groups?
Yeah. I think that's a good place to start and see how it goes. Maybe later on you can roll it out if we have the amount of resources in the bank. I've probably only got a handful of items there at the moment.
Yeah, it'll take us a bit of time to sort out, or Daniel to sort out the process and obtain inventory, and that's why it's important with the auction process for someone that has some insight into what could be repurposed for public art or Lincoln owners, to make sure that we don't sell that. So that's where it will take a little bit of effort. I think there's enough there in the proposed resolution for us to get started on and come back with some detail on how it will all work. But I don't want to prolong it either, but that's enough for us to get on with.
Do you want it? And you were saying before, Scott, that does it need to be a resolution?
Well, it doesn't need to be, but I think given that we've put some effort into the words, we may as well formalise it. It's there as an action. Otherwise, you can just resolve it if you're incomplete. Of a unanimous view about it, you can just have resolved and it'll have a minute reference, but you may as well move and second it now that it's up there and we've debated.
I'll move Councillor Rolfe, second Councillor Daniels, all in favour? Unanimous. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great discussion to have. Thank you, Margaret. Great work. Moving on to commercial services section, the National Sale Yards Expo. Fancy it being in Rockhampton, it's just down the road. Michelle Webster, can I get you to talk us through this exciting opportunity?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you indicated, it's regionally, so that's a good thing. So there'll be no costs incurred other than car travel to attend the expo. So the National Livestock Expo is being held in Rockhampton this year, from the 25th to the 27th of July. We do note in the report that our Mayor, Councillor Hayes, will be a panellist at the forum in regards to an item discussing the future and where the industry will be in 20 years. The report recommends the attendance by Councillors Rolfe, Daniel and Nixon, who are actually members of the Emerald Coordination Committee, Emerald Sale Yards Coordination Committee. Costs for attendance at the expo is included within the report. And a copy of the expo program has also been included for councillors' information.
Fantastic. So councillors, are you happy with that? Councillor Rolfe, Councillor Daniels, you want to attend?
Yes, I am. I think it's a great opportunity considering it's in Central Queensland for to attend Expo.
I haven't had any feedback from Councillor Nixon, but I think it's good practice to
No,
just a broader attendance.
and Councillor Nixon wasn't at the meeting the other day either, at our committee meeting.
Through the chair, we have contacted the councillor to see whether she wished to be
She's
nominated.
Excellent, right. All right, councillors, well, it's a pretty obvious one. The Finance and Infrastructure Committee, the recommendation is that our committee endorse Councillors Rolf Daniels Nixon as members of the Emerald Surrey Arts Coordination Committee to attend the National Surrey Arts Expo in Northampton, 25th to the 27th of July. Who wants to move it? Mayor Hayes moved, seconded. Councillor Rolf, that's a finger up. All in favour? Done. Carried unanimously. And I hope you've got your crystal ball, Mayor Hayes, for your session on future roles.
For a long time.
Feel like it's working. Okay, any general business before we move into our closed session items?
Can I just, yes, just quickly, when I was in the Springshire office yesterday, this is fairly operational, but we were talking about slashes and slashing roads, and I asked about how many slashes there were in the depot, and Rob Moss informed me that there was one slasher there, but it didn't have the fire, the fire tank on the back of it, so it can't be useful, and doesn't quite know where the other slasher's gone to, so but I don't know who it goes to, but just as the infrastructure, just where is stuff sort of disappearing to? Items of equipment that are really, really needed at the moment.
I shall make a note and follow on.
Thanks.
No problem.
Right, good to know. But it does come up a little bit about the slashing. I do get a lot of calls about slashing, particularly from the Springshire area. And I think it's around the timing too. Maybe we haven't got anyone here to answer the question, but it seems to be the timing. We obviously have tenders out to do the TMR road network, but then our council roads that link on to that network are often not done. And one lady who drives a bus hit a pig the other day because she turned off the highway, and she does trips with her line of staff, and she's been really clear. Well, she was pleased that the Gregory Highway was done, but it's just we do the highway and then the rest seem to be done at a different time. So
In discussion with the manager over there, and said that maybe because Saltbush, and I can't think of his name at the moment, sorry, he's only got one tractor, one slasher at the moment, so if he does all the council roads and then change the contract for the main roads to, just a lack of resources.
Okay, yeah, I've taken some notes, so we'll follow up on that.
Thanks.
all right, any other general business? Sensing something there.
Did we deal with actions, just as a
Yeah.
process, or did I just miss it? No.
We dealt with them.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, but we
I must be concentrating on the next report.
Did you talk about the Blackwater raw water?
No,
Well, that's not on there.
it's not on.
Not on that one.
No.
No. And I guess a comment I noticed from going back to the master
Yes, it
document.
is. Sorry,
Oh,
it
about the school, sorry.
is. Yeah, item two.
Oh, yes,
That one.
yeah, but it hasn't been progressed. No, we haven't.
I've just fleetingly.
Oh, okay.
All of them.
Oh,
I didn't
good,
say
good.
Blackwater Walk, I just said Blackwater School.
Yeah, just in terms of an update, obviously, there's only 4 items on there. Item 1, you've got the temporary information. Item 2, there's been some progress, so it's just a timing issue that it's not reflected on the schedule. But the progress has been in terms of trying to obtain a reliable estimate so that we can look at some co-funding contributions to offset the cost of the raw water work. So there is work in that space. Item 3 is obvious. I mean, we've got a couple of councillors away at the LGAQ Disaster Management Conference, so that's been taken care of, and they'll be reflected in our meeting minutes today. And the last one, there's been good progress on that too, and I note that Shelley Fogg's in the gallery, our finance manager, but we've made progress in that area as well, so there's good progress being made on all those.
Good report on the good progress, right?
And, at item 1, I see the report, or a draft report has been completed. When are we scheduled to take a look at that?
That's the National Washington Airport.
Yeah.
Michelle, you know?
I was just seeing that the factual review of draft phase 1 report has been completed. When are we scheduled to take a look at that?
I'm unsure in regards to that, Councillor Daniels. I would hope not too far away. Initially, we were advised that the phase 1 report would be provided to us by the end of March, and here we are in May. So that factual review comments were provided back to them in April prior to Easter. So I can certainly follow that up to establish when we expect to receive it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Chair, through the chair to Michelle, wouldn't that come through to the audit committee? The factual review of the review of the airport? No, not necessarily. That was a matter that was put before council. Council approved to undertake the first stage of that exercise. It's not a matter that's been before the audit committee.
Alright, private general business? Mr. Hayes?
No, all good. No, Chair, thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Alright, well, thanks very much for tuning in, live streamers, but we will move into closed session. We've got a number of items. I probably should just briefly